Hello and good evening and welcome along to the West Yorkshire Football Show. We're here to chat all things Leeds United. I'm Stephen Brown and with me as ever to discuss everything the Whites it is Mr. Jason Booker. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening again, mate. I just saw you.
Good evening again. That's a quick turnaround, isn't it?
Yeah, mate. Nice to be
coming.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice to be back talking Leeds. It feels like we haven't been together for a bit. Just a Leeds focus, isn't it? You've had Nancy on, who the interviews have been great, and the information that we've been able to get out to people has been wicked. So good to be back, mate. Good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely, indeed. And as ever, we always say with Leeds, there's always something going on in the pipeline. Obviously, it's transfer season, and it's funny actually. When I was chatting to Nancy before we got on, she was saying how busy it's starting to get, and we're starting to see that now. We're seeing obviously. We'll probably talk about the loanees, the loan 7 or whatever it was from last season, and that's starting to come to a fruition. Obviously, we know Aaronson's going to be staying at the club. Still question marks over Rasmus and a couple of others, but Mark Rocker is looking like it's going to be a permanent deal, 5 million to Betis. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm glad we're getting a fee rather than another loan out for a second season.
Yeah, and what's the most pleasing about that is I believe he was one of the 2 loans that were still available for this season, the other being Jack Harrison. So the fact that we've been able to get this deal kind of boxed off and actually get a transfer fee in and recoup probably most of what was left on his deal. If you think of amortization, as they call it, the 12 million that we paid for him, minus the 2 years that have gone since we signed him, 7 million is probably not a bad fee. I think they're keen to get it done before his value potentially rises over another year, because he's clearly a good player. I mean, he's been back in the Spanish national setup over the last year. You know, you don't get a move to Bayern Munich if you're a mug. He's clearly a good player. So, yeah, happy with that one, mate. We also saw Lewis Bate confirm a deal out today as well, which is sad in some ways. I think he'll kick on. Stockport are a club that are a bit close to me. I actually did have a quick chat with the head of recruitment there while we were chatting on the previous stream, and just saying that would. Yeah, I just sent him a message saying I was delighted for him, buzzing for the deal, because he's a player I like, and they're a club that I like, obviously previously worked for, and apparently they've been working on that deal for 2 transfer windows. So it shows that there was some serious interest in there, and I think he'll be a top player. I think we'll see him go on to be a championship footballer. He might even appear back in the Premier League. Would not surprise me in the slightest. So anyway, that's a slight segue into Lewis Bate.
Oh, good, yeah, good move. Because I mean, I'm similar to you. I really rated Lewis Bate, and obviously came with a massive reputation from Chelsea. We saw him in the League Cup last year, and he impressed us then, didn't he? So yeah, best of luck to Lewis there. A man on probably the opposite end of the spectrum who could find his way back at Ellen Road, who had a very, very interesting game in the European Championship the other night, is of course Max Wöber, who had obviously told everyone that he didn't want to hear about transfers or anything. He told his agent, don't tell me about anything, don't inform me of any offers, I don't want to talk about it until the European Championships is done. Had a bit of a nightmare, to say the least. Jason, yellow card, own goal.
Booked as well.
Yeah. Do you think we're going to see him back at Ellen Road? I mean, not probably dependent on that, but I mean, you know, we were joking, you know, if it's a good performance, you never know, he might have had his value rocket and might have been a couple of suitors, but it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that one, isn't it?
From what's been reported, he said goodbye to the Mönchengladbach players as if he's not going back there, which tells me that we've got a price set for him that they're not prepared to pay. That being said, I don't imagine there's going to be a world in which he comes back and plays championship football. I mean, the be all and end all of it is a bit of a one. I'm going to say that. I don't like the way that he's behaved, but I do think he's too good for the championship. All that being said, even the performance the other day is by the by, really. He's playing, obviously, probably the best team in the competition in France. He's dealing with Mbappe and whatnot. I do think he's a very good centre-back. I think he came into the Leeds team in a time where we looked terrible and he looked slightly less terrible. So I do think we gassed him up a little bit at the time, but he's then gone on to have a really good season at Mönchengladbach this season as well. So I do think he's a solid option. Don't imagine him playing championship football. It's just whether somebody's going to be prepared to pay the fee or not. And if they're not, they might just decide to loan him back out again.
Yeah, absolutely, indeed. Another one who has probably tarnished his reputation with Leeds, certainly in my eyes, is Jack Harrison. Someone
Can't
who,
stand him. If I'm
no,
honest.
I mean, this is someone who was, I said to Nancy the other day, this is a guy that was there for the whole of Bielsa's reign, and you kind of, I can't believe he up sticks so easily. Now, obviously, the caveat is we did try and sell him in the January before he did leave, so I can understand possibly, his affections weren't quite fully attuned at that point, but looks like it's going to be another loan to Everton, which is a little bit frustrating. I would have liked to have seen a permanent deal, but obviously we know about Everton's financial issues. I think they're in talks now to be taken over by the Roma guy, the American. But yeah, it's one of them where it's going to hang over our head, and then we'll see what happens next year with that. Never any danger of him coming back to Ellen Road, was there?
No, and I mean, again, you can have your critics of Jack Harrison, but he's a Premier League player. Whether that be in the bottom half or even maybe bottom 6 or 7, that's what he is. He's a reliable all-round winger that can play on either side. Availability is massive. He will be available for 38 out of 38 games. Doesn't get suspended, doesn't get injured. He's fit. Like, he's a very strong, athletic player who's up and down that pitch. Is perfect for Sean Dyche's side. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. I just think that the whole feeling around Jack Harrison is a bit watered now. It's a bit coloured. There'd be no route back for him, whether it be because of his mum, whether it be because of the way that he left and the things that he said, or even more importantly, the things that he didn't say. It was so hollow, was the leaving message, in the way that it was just, oh, look at the results, right? See you later. Like, it was just very, very. But you know what? I think that's just him. I think if you watch his other interviews over the years, I think that's just the way that he is. Bit flaky, a little bit flimsy. He openly said that he had a lot of challenges when it came to the mental side of the game, and that shouldn't be scoffed at. But I think it just says a lot about the way that he kind of thinks and about everything, So yeah, it's no surprise. I'm not disappointed, and absolutely agree that it'd be better if he could leave on a permanent, but he will do at some point. He's still a valuable asset to us. He'll still fetch 15-20 million in another year's time, should it be that we decide to let him go. So yeah, fair play to him. I think it's just one of them. Just need to move on, and yeah, best for both parties, I think.
Yeah. Thanks for your comments, Michael. I believe Greenwood is also back at Leeds after Middlesbrough did not take up the option to buy him. Now, do we know that is the situation then? Because it's interesting with Greenwood, isn't it? Because he initially looked as if that was going to be a great move for him. I know he got a couple of goals and you thought, what's going on? I must admit, I didn't keep an eye on it kind of for the last few months of the season. Obviously, there's so much going on at Leeds. But yeah, what do we think? Greenwood back at Leeds. I mean, can you see that really being one that they'll stick with, or do you think it'll be shifted on somewhere else?
He started the season well at Middlesbrough, as you say, but then they seem to they bought in January, and I think he ended up his minutes ended up getting replaced by others within the side. And bear in mind they had an awful start to the season as well, which coincided with him playing games, and then I think he was to come out of the side, and they ended up improving. So they had an option for 2.25 million, and they've not taken that in the deal, which says everything about him and the deal. Well, they've gone and signed Jack Rodon today from Huddersfield for £5 million. Now, they could have had Sam Greenwood, who is similar in age, profile, position and everything, and they chose to spend double the amount on a player that's just been relegated to League One. So I think that says everything about what they think about him and his potential for, further sell on down the line, because that is a reason why you would buy young English players, and what he can give the squad as a whole now. So could he come into the squad and play a part off the bench? Maybe. It'd be an option. But I would imagine if we're serious about winning the league, which is what we need to be, I can only imagine that he'd be 4th or 5th choice at centre midfield, at 10, at right mid. He'd maybe slot in for 10 minutes here and there in them games. I can't imagine he's taking a place for much more than that, if I'm honest.
No, I am inclined to agree with that one. Now, you did call this earlier, Jason. Wilfried Gnonto probably, going back to Serie A, strong link with Napoli that's come about as well. You mentioned you thought you could see him ending up back over there. I can imagine him at Napoli as well. His type of, I can just see something like that, because Napoli, obviously, they run pretty prudently as well, aren't they? And they've had a horrible season after winning the league. And I mean, I guess it just depends, how much are they're willing to stump up, I guess. I mean, what are we asking for with Willie Gnonto? It's very difficult to say, isn't it? Because there's probably been times, when he burst onto the scene in the Premier League where you were looking at 20 plus, and then, the value drops as you get relegated. But I mean, what would you be happy with in terms of a fee for Willie?
I think if you try and place yourself in the eyes of a fan of, let's say, an Aston Villa, or somebody that maybe not Villa because I've got FFP, but somebody in and amongst the cohort that would want to sign young players that potentially are going to progress on, and they're able to spend a certain amount of money, but they would want to potentially sell their asset on for 40 or 50 million down the line.
Yeah,
they're going to be looking at a player like Gnonto and thinking 12 million, 15 million. They're not going to be looking at 25 or 30 million. They're just not, because he's not worth that. Like this season, he's had fleeting moments. I would again say 5 to 10 games out of 46, plus the cup games, where he's really stood out. And I've said this before about him in the season before. Really, when you think about it, it was 5 games that he played well in. It weren't 15, 20 games like some Leeds fans kind of want to make out. Bear in mind, he got dropped under Allardyce. When Allardyce took over, after Allardyce had come out and said, you play him in every game, he's the star boy, and then he played him in the first game, he were awful, and he didn't start again after that. So Allardyce even went back on it after saying all them things. So I really struggle to value his potential any more than 15 million, if I'm honest. I think he has this kind of skewed perception because he played so many games for Italy under Mancini. I think there's this kind of idea that he's this massive international footballer, that he's an Italian first teamer that needs to be, valued at a huge amount. And I think Italian football were going through a huge process change at the time. Since Mancini's gone, he's not been anywhere near the squad. He's been back in the 21s. So I struggle to really value him anymore. And I think we'd do well to get 15 million quid. And from what I've heard, I think the amount that we'd owe Zurich, I forget what the word is for it now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I believe it's about 40%. Ooh. So you're then talking having to cover a huge amount. Yeah, it's a big chunk. Bear in mind, we only sign him for like 3 million. So
I hear that when you do that on Football Manager, when you sign like a Brazilian wonder kid, and you're like, I'm only signing for 2 million. I'll give him a 40% sellout, and then when they're like world class,
70 million,
150 million, and you're like, no, come on. But no, I get that.
So I think that's a big part of why we're probably going to struggle to get the value that we want, because even if we sell them for 15 million, we're going to clear 6. You know what I mean? So it's tricky. It's tricky.
Yeah. No, absolutely. We know that there has to be probably one biggish sale, and the spotlight is firmly on that man, Crysencio Summerville. A big link coming with Brighton this week. Actually, Nancy Froston said that's kind of not... It's not really in fruition. Not sure where that's come from. We don't think that's actually happening. It's a little bit interesting with Summerville, though, and it almost follows on from what LUFC says here. Is he going, or is it just paper talk because he looks happy? And it's funny because I went on Instagram the other day and he's like running a competition to give a Leeds shirt away, and I'm like, what is this guy doing? Could he actually be staying? And one thing I've got to say for Summerville, he does not seem to be trying to force anything. He doesn't seem in that kind of mindset where it's a player heavily linked with a potential big move who just looks to be cutting ties and barely wants to be associated with us. He still seems kind of part of the Leeds fabric. But I mean, I think he will absolutely go. But it's almost, I guess, in our favour that this guy isn't trying to rush out the door. There's a chance. And I put this to Nancy the other day. Do you think Leeds have a set fee in their head? Like if clubs hit 35 million, you can talk to him, and then it's a case of who he picks? Or are we going to try and get a bit of a a war going here, and maybe right, okay, they've offered 35, right, 40. You know, I mean, it'd be interesting to see how it works, because obviously, if you start getting those bigger offers, you don't want to potentially scare them off, do you, by trying to increase the value. It's really tricky stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a balancing act for sure, because you don't want to see these teams go elsewhere, and there is other players that are like Crysencio Summerville with the same potential and ceiling that they could go and buy instead. And you're talking about massive amounts of money, of which we do need to comply with FFP, and then rebuild a squad to go again next season. I do think it's a part of that. I don't think there's any world in which Crysencio Summerville stays at Leeds. I would have fully imagined that once the end of June hits and all the windows are open and everybody's talking, it maybe even once the Euros is finished and everybody starts, kind of the dominoes start falling, I think you'll start seeing something happen. I would imagine the 49ers, being the way that they are, will encourage some sort of buying haggle, that they're going to want to stoke up a bit of a bidding war. I do think that Summerville's kind of approach to it will matter to them. I think they're going to be okay buying. I think he is a good lad. I think he has an affection for Leeds as well, genuinely, where he's not going to kind of barge himself out the door, but he also doesn't need to. I don't think there's any need for him to kind of kick and scream like Gnonto tried to do just to get the quickest buck last year. I don't think it's about that, because he doesn't need to. He's going to have the pick of the clubs, given what he's just, put out there last year. But yeah, I would imagine that he'll go, mate. And Brighton's a funny one, because when it first came through, I texted you and I said, I just don't see them spending that amount on a player. But I've kind of gone back and checked myself with it a little bit, and they very quickly did it for João Pedro at Watford. Very similar kind of profile, very similar kind of figure at 30 million quid from the Championship. And I would argue that João Pedro had not put the same effects together that Summerville has last season. So with that in mind, Summerville's probably worth more, which then fits in at around 35 million quid. So if Brighton want to get ahead of the game and get to it before these other clubs sort their stuff out, they might steal a march on him. I mean, he certainly could. They could offer him a lot that the other ones couldn't. There's going to be a bit of uncertainty with the new manager. So, Brighton may end up falling back into where I see them in the pecking order of the Premier League, which isn't the 7th and 8th that they've been able to achieve recently. So there's risks attached to it, but there's guarantee of game time. So it depends on where he's at, because I think he would back himself to go in at Chelsea or Liverpool and start. So don't know. Yeah. It's going to be interesting. It goes with my blessing, It genuinely goes with my kind of backing. Like I'm okay with it. He did everything for us that he could last season. We ended up becoming Summerville FC at some point. Absolutely carried us. For me, it can go.
He never wanted away. I know there's been kind of, people have kind of rumored about his attitude or whatever, or but he's never. He's not done what Willie did he? Skipper is an interesting one. I can see Gray leaving to Spurs with Rodon deal and maybe Skip. I would, I've got to say this, and I apologise to Spurs fans. I would be so disappointed if Gray went to Spurs. I really would. I think that would be such. I just see Spurs as just that. They are a top club and everything like that. The stadiums, they're part of the top 6. I get that, but I'd be so disappointed if we lost.
It almost feels sideways, doesn't it? It almost feels sideways. I know it's not, and I know that's me being a bit Leeds biased, but like go to a monster, go to a Bayern, go to a Dortmund, go to a Arsenal, Liverpool, like go to a proper monster club. Don't go to Spurs. I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. I don't see that deal happening. I just don't. I think people have got again a bit of an inflated price range in Gray. Like, I mean, people have been talking about 30 million plus Skip plus Rodon. That's just not going to happen. That's not going to happen. You got 20 million quid worth of assets there. And Gray, at the moment, if we were to sell him now and be actively looking at selling him, you'd be looking to get 25, 30 million quid for a player that's played one season in the Championship. That's a lot of money. You're not going to be talking about 50 million. Bear in mind, I know Bellingham were a bit younger and only had like a year, but he went to Dortmund for about 8 million, 10 million, something like that. It was next to nothing. So yeah, and I don't see it. I have seen a content creator, I can't remember who it was now, put out on Twitter earlier that somebody that he's well known of, connected with in Ipswich, have got a deal in place for Joe Rodon. So it does look like Joe Rodon could well be popping up at Ipswich. Browney just really took that to heart, apparently.
Hello.
Yeah. You didn't want to hear about my Joe Rodon link.
No, I know. Do you know it's getting to juicy bit? I was like, oh no, and then I've gone. Boom. Sorry, mate. What were you saying?
No, I was saying I've seen on socials earlier somebody that's well within the kind of content creator sphere had put on a link that he's got with somebody at Ipswich who's in the know, and apparently the Joe Rodon deal to there is done. That's what it said. I can imagine that could be the case. I could see him going there. I think it'd be a very silly move in many ways. I think it's a deal for a year. I think they're going to be next year's Luton. Unfortunately for them, I just don't think they're going to have what it needs to compete, but I could be completely wrong. I think the deal long term to Leeds, 5-year move, give him the contract that he deserves. 1 year, get us up, and then you've got a bit of a basis to play Premier League football for a few years. But you know what? Again, that's a bit of bias talking. So
no, that's the thing. Speaking of potential incomings, a link that's kind of appeared, I think, the last couple of days is Petr Ratkov from RB Salzburg, Red Bull, part of the Red Bull family now.
Yeah.
I've got to admit, I don't think I'd ever even heard of him before this link. Jason, have you had a chance to kind of check this guy out, or do you know much at all about?
I don't know much about him. I've heard of him. I know he's in the Euro squad for Serbia. He was on the bench against us the other day. I know he's part of the Red Bull network. He's not long moved to Salzburg, I believe. 6'4" striker. Would come at probably quite a low risk in terms of price range, and that's the kind of market that we're fishing in. I know the articles that have come out over the last couple of weeks is that we're looking between 3 and 6 million is the kind of price ranges that we're wanting to be spending, and he would kind of fit to that. He'd be a good option that could start games, but also probably wouldn't mind having a season on the bench in and amongst the situation with Pirro, Bamford, Joseph, and whoever else is going to be potential in that position. So a lot of it makes sense. Could just be a Red Bull link, but it's been quite strong over the last 24 hours that it's a goer. So we'll see. It's an exciting one from a potential perspective. If you're 20-year-old and you're making part of your national squad for the Euros, you can't be a slouch. So.
Yeah. No, indeed. Anything else you're hearing on the grapevine then about incomings at all? Anything kind of piqued your interest?
Not massively. There hasn't been a huge amount of incoming transfer talk. There's been more outgoing transfer talk. I know that the conversations with regards to Bamford and ex-player. I think there's a link for everybody going out. I've just seen a picture on socials of Ethan Ampadu holidaying with Nico Williams, which is just a link that just seems to never go away. We're going to be forever linked with Nico Williams now, like we were with Ryan Kent back in the day. He's going to be the new one. Until we get rid of a few of the Welshies, maybe it'll be forever linked. So, but no, I've not heard much else. I think it'll start ramping up over the next probably 2 weeks, I think. And I think the Summerville domino is probably going to start all of them for us. I don't think much happens before then.
That big outgoing that's just going to kind of tick the PSR boxes where we go, right, we've done that. We've sorted out now. The books are fine. Let's crack on and get some incomings.
I'd like us to be smart with how we go about the business, and I think we will be. I think there's good opportunities in the free transfer market. There's a good few freebies out there that we could go and bolster the squad out with. Because the more I think about this season, sure we had some profiles missing, the 10, and you could argue a right back and another centre midfielder, but I just think we lacked a little bit more quality in depth and experience, and there's a fair bit of that out there that we could go out and get. So it should be an interesting. I'm really looking forward to this window, to see where we go and what we do.
Yeah, what do you think, make of this? Do you think we need to bring in a number one keeper? Asked Skip. I mean, for me, I don't see it, because I think I don't know what, I think Darlow's got another year or so, and I think Meslier. I mean, I've not heard any links about anyone coming in for Meslier. I just feel like that's probably going to be there. They're probably going to be both there. I think I can't see anything happening unless something kind of comes out of the blue. I mean, I know we had criticism on Meslier at times last season. I think there's just probably maybe more pressing things that we have to kind of solve in the squad first, potentially.
The problem with Meslier is that he's not commanding the value of which you would need to get to make it worthwhile selling him. I actually think we would struggle to get 7 million. I think you'd be talking 5-6 million if we were really actively looking to sell him. I think his stock has depreciated that much that he's only really showing himself to be a championship goalkeeper. Yeah. You know, the stat that's been flying around is that he was 22nd for shot stopping last season. That's just not okay in a team that finished third in the division. I mean, it's horrendous. Shot stopping ability from distance was just absolutely woeful. I would absolutely be looking to replace him. I do think it's a problem position, but I think you're spot on, Browney, in that there is other more pressing, concerning issues. We've got a real issue at centre back. You know, we've got a real issue at centre back. If Wöber's not going to stay, which we all don't think he will, if Rodon's not going to sign, which we all now don't think he will, right now on the books, we've got Pascal Struijk and Charlie Cresswell. That can't be a starting centre backs going into next season. Struijk missed 20 games of the season in the league. Charlie Cresswell's already shown that he's not Farke's fourth choice, let alone second choice. So we need two. I think probably 3 centre-backs, especially if Cooper goes and we've got no fourth or fifth choice. You know, I don't want to be seeing Ampadu having to play 20 games there again next season. As great as he did, because he did, I want to see him in midfield next season. So, yeah, I think we've got a few pressing positions, if I'm honest. I think the squad's going to look very different. I think we're going to be talking 7 or 8, mate. I really do.
I think I'm like you, though. I think I'm excited by this window because I think, I mean, you know, Nancy did an article the other day about Leeds' commercial power, and some of the stats are staggering. You know, it really is staggering how big Leeds are commercially and that revenue that they get. You know, shirt sales, commercial revenue, how much they make, and you know, this is a team that's been outside the Premier League for a year. The potential, we all know, we've spoken about it for years, the potential with Leeds, and I just think this year is automatic. Absolutely automatic. I don't think there's any excuse for Farke to this season. There's just none. There's absolutely none for me. Now, you could argue maybe it's a weaker individual team, you know, if you've lost Summerville or a Gnonto or whatever. But, I mean, my God, it has to be this season. It has to be promotion. I mean, the Red Bull deal, I mean, what more could you want? I mean, if you, and the thing is as well, we're going to have a pick of players as well. I mean, what player would not want to? I'm talking from a certain level down. Sure. Yeah. What player is not going to want to sign for Leeds this season? Because you're basically guaranteed to be challenging at the top. I mean, it's just I'm excited in that way because I think we've just got to be on it. I've got some reservations about Farke, though, I'll be honest. I've got some reservations about how he's putting the team together and everything like that. But then maybe there's an argument that the team will look more like what he's trying to do. I don't know if he's progressive enough. You know, if there was a more exciting coach out there, maybe, you know, I'd be a little bit more excited about it. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think, mate?
I think he's steady in here. I think we've all seen this season that it's steady. You know, he still has 2 championship winning promotions on his CV that can't be discredited. He has a 90-point season on his CV last season that shouldn't be discredited either, given some of the problems and tribulations that we had. It probably deserves a little bit more respect for last season. Very young squad, you know, with some gaping gaps and with some injury problems, you know. So I'm happy to give him time. But I do think he has a short leash. I think he has a very short leash. I said to you, you know, come the end of August, if he's not within that top 2, I think you're already starting to look at pressure. And I want to see him by November. I want to see us out of sight. I want 6, 7, 8 point gap to second, you know, or even third, you know, whatever, however you want to look at it. We need to be securely in them positions. And I don't think the 49ers will give him too much longer than that either. I think they're going to be expecting this year. Not last season, they were fair, I think, in giving time and grace, a bit of a grace period. I don't think they're going to get that this season. I think he'll get everything he needs. I think the squad will look exactly what he wants it to look like come the first game of the season. I don't even think he'll get the grace period of August like he did last year, which was fair. I think it'll be, look, Daniel, you've got your squad. We need to see 4 wins out of every 5. You know, like we need to be winning 6, 7, 8 games on the bounce, drawing one, another 5 on the bounce, losing one. You know, like it needs to be consistent. Yeah, and we're doing what Leicester did at the beginning of last season. That's really where we need to be at. I've got to say, I'm excited to see Brenden Aaronson back in the fold. There's something about it that excites me. I hope I'm right. I hope he doesn't go back on his word and starts to look for a way out, or a club becomes interested and he then wants to take this loan clause. If that loan clause is still there, we're not sure what exists and what doesn't. I don't think he had a loan clause. That's my opinion on it now. Now that all the dust has settled and he had these offers to go back, I think the money that were on offer for us and for him was probably too little. I think Union Berlin have probably come back and said, look, we'll take you again, but we're going to pay you what Leeds are paying you in the Championship. And he's gone, well, I might as well go back to Leeds then. And nobody's been prepared to sign him at the value of what we would need to make sure that PSR isn't affected, because we spent so much money on him. If we sell him for 10 million, which is probably what he's worth, we'd be more in the SHIT than if we actually kept him. So I think we've made the decision to keep him.
Yeah, well, we had that interview as well, wasn't there, in the Athletic, where it was a bit of PR going, where it was, talking to his granddad or whatever about, I want to make it work at Leeds and all this kind of stuff. And I wouldn't be surprised if kind of, a few things have happened in the background with what you're talking about that have actually helped that decision along.
But you know what, Brownie, right? I'm going to lap that up. I'm a fan.
Yeah, same.
I'm lapping it up. Give me it. Yeah. But what you need to now do, Brenden, is show it on the pitch.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. Like, I'm happy to take that in and get excited for you. I'm happy to back you and support you when you come onto the pitch. But now you got to show it in the performances. And I do believe that he will absolutely stand out. I think there'll be moments in the game where you're like, this lad is literally tearing this division up. Yeah. And I think the more that we're successful, I think the more confidence you'll see from Brenden Aaronson and the better player you will see. I think he'll suit the style of Daniel Farke's system, the 3-10s, or however you kind of position that. I think he'll probably play as one of the outside 10s, and then you'll see either Dan James or another player on the wing that'll be the pace, because I believe that's how we played with the 3-10s at Norwich. They had 2 10s and then a winger on one side to give that kind of overload and the stretch. Firpo on one side, James on the other, make quite a nice little combination of attacking outputs that's going wide, and then the others centrally. And Brenden Aaronson in a press would be lovely, because that's what we missed last season. I mean, he'd be all over and won it. At Championship level, where more mistakes happen and keepers are a bit slower and a bit more dithery, I just see him being a really, really good player to watch. So, I'm excited about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of that player we saw in the first, 10 games, whatever, the Premier League, I mean, that in the Championship, and, apparently he's put on muscle as well. He's put 6 pounds of muscle on, and, he's kind of improved physically a bit. So, hey, let's just wait and see.
I don't fully blame him either, Brownie. Like, Leeds fans want to get all hot-headed about players leaving and whatnot, but we're fans. We see it differently. Brenden Aaronson had a hard time last year, came over, signed for a manager that then got sacked. He then had to work through another 3 managers, brand new league, stepping up from an Austrian league, new country, new culture, and all the rest of it that comes with that. And then it was kind of the lightning rod once Marsh had gone for criticism. And, is it fair that he then took an opportunity that came to go and play Champions League football in the following season, given everything that he'd had, and he had the opportunity to double his wages, and he's not a Leeds fan? Like, you know what I mean? Like, when you put that all together, I'm like, all right, fine.
I have a tough time with that as well, because I thought the criticism went too far, and I think it gets to that kind of personal level. You see it all over Twitter where it's like vitriolic. Yeah. And I think, I agree. He strikes me as a really nice lad who came to a club, and unfortunately it all went crumbling around him, and this is why I'm actually more aggrieved with Jack Harrison.
Yeah, I agree.
The way he left, actually. I'm more upset at that than anything else, really, because, you look at Weston McKennie, and, he took tons and tons of dog's abuse. But he hadn't been there for 4 years or anything like Harrison had, and not that Bielsa connection. So, I hope he comes back, and I hope he absolutely tears it up. I really do.
If you're going to throw shade at any of the American boys, give it to Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie after their performances this week. They've been giving Leeds United pelters, haven't they, this week? I know you just said that he didn't deserve it at the time, Weston McKennie, and he didn't, to be fair. Like, Weston McKennie was just in and amongst everybody else that was playing terrible at the time. So, yeah, you're 100% spot on with that. But, yeah, they've been a bit naughty this week of them too. But whatever, they've moved on now, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. We'll see him again in 12 months, I tell you.
Yeah.
Which is a fun thing as well, because Leeds fans, Leeds have taken absolute pelters from, I'm seeing bloody curries online that were digging us out, and we've had, Ipswich are still banging on about us, not seeing Leeds in the Premier League fixtures and all that, and I just go straight back to Derby when they beat us in the playoffs, and 12 months later we're sat in their stand with the spyglasses, lapping it up. And you know what? That's how it works in football. It'll come back round. It'll bite you in the ass.
And they ended up in League One.
So,
yeah.
Ipswich, Leicester fans, fine. Yeah. Enjoy it because, we're still right at it.
They should both be very, very careful because they're both going to be in for a brutal season next season. I mean, you're talking about Leicester having 15 points deduction, and they've just hired Steve Cooper. I'm not a fan. I think you are a bit of a fan, aren't you? Not? I can't remember.
No,
I'm not a fan at all.
No.
Like, Leeds fans have been calling for him last season, sack Falcon, but I don't rate him at all. I don't think he's it at all. And then Ipswich, they've got Liverpool and City in the first two games. Let's see how much you're enjoying it after the first two games.
Well, that's it. Exactly. I mean, the only thing I could see potentially with Ipswich is, they've won, 90 games or something in 2 seasons or whatever, and maybe somehow they'll do it. But are they even going to be able to? I mean, are they even going to be able to spend that much money? I mean, it's such a big that first year trying to get the leap. It's absolutely huge. So I won't be surprised if it comes back around and bites them all in the ass, and I'll be there, and I'll absolutely love it. If it happens, I really will. Good stuff. Anything else you want to cover off, Jason, before we disappear and catch up with the rest of some Euro 2024?
No, I don't think so. I think that's pretty much as up to date on Leeds news. I'm excited to see it all start kicking off. I'm excited to see the fixtures next week, which will be good. No doubt we'll have Portsmouth away on the opening Friday.
Yeah. Well, I've just remembered. What are you? Because I've heard this link's come out today about Van Nistelrooy at Burnley. And I'm like, now the thing is, I don't know. I haven't followed Ruud Van Nistelrooy's coaching career or anything, but I don't want them to get anything that might potentially be special. Do you know what I mean? I want them to get like Lampard, like they were linked with before. I want them to get a bog standard person. I don't want like some progressive person coming in and tearing it up like Company did at Burnley. We need these clubs to just be crap, Not please don't employ a genius or anything, please.
Yeah, I think similar to what you said. I don't know much about his style or his pedigree, but we obviously all know who he is, and I do know that he's well respected because I think if I'm right in thinking he is somewhere in Europe now. Is he in Holland somewhere?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
He's been linked to a couple of roles before. I think he was even linked to the Leicester role. So yeah, it'll be an interesting one. It's the unknown. It's one of them. It could go completely either way, couldn't it? I think Rossini was heavily linked as well. I think that'd be a good move for them, if I'm honest. I agree with you. I want them to have a Lampard or a Cooper. That'd have been absolutely perfect. But it seems like they're going with the progressive kind of look. But we'll only know once time takes its toll and we see what they can deliver. Championship's a bit of a difference in it. Company would know the requirements a bit more than a Van Nistelrooy probably would. So, but be interesting, mate. Be interesting. There's going to be some competition. There's got to be some competition up there. You know what I mean?
Maybe. We'll see. Good stuff. All right. Well, myself and Jason will be back on every week over the summer to catch up on all the latest happenings at Ellen Road. It's going to be a busy time, I think. Really want to appreciate everyone who got the comments in. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel as well. Like I say, we'll be back next week. Jason, thank you very much for your time this evening, mate.
Very welcome, mate. Thank you.
And we'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.